100 people last week, including a baby at her father's funeral.
I'm going to leave it. We murdered 300 terrorists last week, and I think those are your people.
Okay. A one-year-old baby is a terrorist? I think that speaks volumes about your view of Arabs.
The one-year-old baby was put in harm's way because Hezbollah
I'm going to leave it there, gentlemen. At a funeral?
I
appreciate you joining me.
We've
run out of time. So thank you both very much.
You know, a political debate is about to get interesting when both sides walk into the conversation absolutely convinced they're holding the moral high ground, and within minutes, the entire argument starts unraveling in real time. Because what you're about to watch is not just another heated TV exchange. No, this one turns into a full-on clash over war, nuclear policy, political double standards, and one of the most controversial questions in global politics right now: who exactly gets to decide which countries can defend themselves and which countries can't? Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now, today's clip features what can only be described as a very intense head-to-head exchange between Mehdi Hasan and Doron Spielman, an IDF reservist spokesperson. And let me tell you right now, if you're expecting polite agreement and soft questioning, that is absolutely not what happens here. This debate escalates quickly. What starts as a discussion about Iran and regional security soon turns into something much bigger: a confrontation over Israel's nuclear position, accusations of political hypocrisy, and serious questions about whether recent military actions in the region have actually made the situation safer or dramatically more unstable. And if you've watched political media long enough, you already know the pattern. Big claims get thrown around. Emotional arguments take over. Politicians and spokespersons speak with absolute certainty. But every now and then, someone pushes back hard enough to completely change the energy in the room. That's exactly why this exchange stands out. Because throughout this discussion, Mehdi Hasan repeatedly challenges Doron on issues surrounding Israel's nuclear stance, military decisions, and the broader consequences of escalating tensions with Iran. And let's just say, things get uncomfortable very quickly. Now, I'm going to hold my full thoughts, commentary, and perspective until the end because, trust me, there is a lot to unpack here. Some of the claims made in this debate are going to leave people divided, frustrated, and probably arguing in the comment section. But one thing I can say already, this conversation gets intense fast. So grab your popcorn, stay until the end, and let's break this entire thing down together because this one is definitely worth watching.
Well, joining me to debate this is Mehdi Hasan, founder of Zateo News, and Doron Spielman, the reservist IDF spokesman and author of When the Stones Speak. All right, well, welcome to both of you. Doron Spielman, welcome back to Uncensored. The New York Times piece that came out several days ago painted a pretty extraordinary picture of the Prime Minister of Israel sitting in the Situation Room at the White House with the head of Mossad appearing on a large screen, and painting a picture of what would happen if the United States joined Israel in taking out the Supreme Leader of Iran and his top people who were all going to be congregating. That inevitably what would happen is the IRGC, the sort of ruling regime underneath the Supreme Leader, would collapse. The people of Iran would rise up, and that nobody would care or notice the Strait of Hormuz. That would be an irrelevance to all this. And all that's happened is that, and a lot of people in the room on the American side thought this was fantasy land. And all that's happened is the first part happened. The Ayatollah and his top people were taken out in a successful strike. But the IRGC remain in place. The people haven't risen up. And the Iranians have worked out the Strait of Hormuz can be used as an economic weapon to rival anything that people can do against them militarily and cause enormous global economic damage. Do you accept that the Americans were sold a pup here?
Piers, thank you for having me. I think actually, Piers, we're going to look back at this as a war that was as consequential as perhaps if the West had information in 1936 to act against Nazi Germany. We have to put this in perspective. Wars take time. Iran has had 40 years to embed. There's not been a single US president, starting with Ronald Reagan, who I greatly respect, going all the way through Clinton, Obama, and Biden, who's been willing to pay the political capital to stop the Iranian terror regime, the largest regime in the world, from developing a nuclear weapon. And why? Because it requires a preemptive strike. You have to preemptively stop Iran. If you don't preemptively stop Iran from having a bomb, the alternative is you're only going to stop it when that bomb lands in your soil. And we don't want to have a 9/11 where instead of 2 passenger planes, we're dealing with an atomic weapon. And I think President Trump has been incredibly consistent from the very beginning. And here, obviously, he shares a value with Israel, which is that Iran cannot be a nuclear regime. It's very, very simple. You cannot have an Iranian terror regime that instead of blocking the Straits of Hormuz with ballistic missiles, they can block the Straits of Hormuz with a nuclear weapon. You can't have a regime that when they shoot at Israel, which we've had more than 6,000 of their weapons, both from Hezbollah and Iran, we've had over 1,000 over the last 12 months, any one of them loaded with a nuclear weapon. And we have to take a step back here. We see the face of the regime. They're an evil monster. They're hitting their own allies. How could we even conceive that we would not take the opportunity to eliminate this before it grows? And the shock, Piers, is that I have people like Mehdi, who's going to join us shortly, and people all over these kind of this liberal fantasy land that you can transplant what you hear in the Oxford corridors if you just act nice and you kind of reason with them. Well, maybe they want a bomb, but they're not really going to use it. It's only for civilian energy. What are we talking about? Wake up. This is the face of terror with a bomb and it's being stopped. And therefore, I think President Trump, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and it should be the entire Western world, is now has an opportunity to stop this before it happens. And I think, if anything, it's praiseworthy, Piers.
Okay, Mehdi Hasan, it's praiseworthy.
Well, it's not praiseworthy. The entire war has been a disaster. I think everyone agrees on that. Even the Israeli opposition agrees it's been a disaster, the way Netanyahu and Trump have handled it. I think any objective person can look at the state of this war, even if you are pro the US government, pro the Israeli government, and say it's been a success. But let's put that to one side. I want to take on board what Doran said across the board, because a lot of it was pure projection. I mean, I'm hearing him talk about monsters in charge of governments, the face of terror, nuclear weapons. Who are we talking about here, Iran or Israel? Because I would ask a few questions for your viewers to consider today as they listen to Doran. Which country in the Middle East has nuclear weapons? It's not Iran, it's Israel. Which country in the Middle East has not signed the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty? It's not Iran, it's Israel. Which country in the Middle East is defying a UN Security Council resolution calling for that country to open up its nuclear facilities to IAEA inspectors? It's not Iran, it's Israel. Which country in the Middle East attacked 6 countries in the Middle East last year? 6. It wasn't Iran, it was Israel. So Iran, for all its many sins and crimes, is not the rogue nuclear state in the Middle East right now. That country is Israel. As you said, Piers, in your introduction, global public opinion has made it very clear that they see Israel as the threat to regional and international peace right now. You pointed out, Piers, that it's Benjamin Netanyahu dragging American Republican presidents into wars of choice, Iraq in 2002-3, and now Iran in 2025, 2026.
Yeah, I mean, Doran Spellman, the flaw in your argument is just a bunch of woolly liberals who didn't want this to happen. If you look at actually the reaction from American conservatives, you know, you got Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens, Alex Jones. You've got Trump supporters like Joe Rogan, Theo Von, and others, the big podcasters who helped get him elected. There's a massive cross-section of very influential people, many of whom are conservative Trump supporters historically, who have condemned this war and want nothing to do with it. So I don't think you can just bat it away as, oh, it's just a bunch of, you know, liberals throwing their toys out of the pram. It's not.
You know, I love the word projection because projection is used by people who don't live in the real world, because the alternative to a projection when it comes to a nuclear weapon, when does that projection end, Mehdi? Does it end when Iran is trying to develop enriched uranium, and already back before the JCPOA had already developed 6 times, and now they've developed almost 90% of enriched uranium, which is 20 times the amount you need for an atomic weapon? Is that for civil uses? Is that still a projection, or is it when they actually press that little button and it lands in the U.S.?
Well, let me ask you. Well, let me before.
Hold on, Piers.
Well, hang on. On that point, Doran, on that point, given you said
a projection that 22 civilians have been killed
but let me
from
ask
ballistic
you.
missiles, and we've had 600 warheads on Israel. We've had warheads
22?
land on the
killed
UAE.
2,000 people in Lebanon and 3,000 people in Iran.
And regarding, you know, this is so funny. Regarding Iran, You put them on the court bench. You call in someone for a character reference, comparing Iran to Israel. Who's Iran? Well, they've developed a global terror regime that stretches from the Middle East through Latin America into Europe. They have the Houthis who've stopped shipping and have fired missiles and weapons both at Israel and U.S. assets. They created Hezbollah, the world's largest terror organization. That is also one of the largest drug organizations.
Actually, you created Hezbollah by illegally invading Lebanon.
Who committed October 7th. They just killed 30,000 of their people in the streets for protesting. I mean, do we need such a projection? I mean, only an idiot would actually say we need a projection to understand what Iran's intent is. We don't even need to try. They keep shoving it in your face, Mehdi. You're in absolute denial, and so is Candace Owens, and so is Tucker Carlson, and President Trump. Thank God.
I'm not here to speak for. I'm not here to speak for. Hold on, Doran. Let me respond. You said a lot there. I'm not here to speak for Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens, who I've been very critical of. I'm not here to speak for Iran, who I've been very critical of. I'm here to talk about facts. You say projection. Let's just deal with your little speech in two ways. Number one, even if I were to accept your premise that Iran's nuclear program was a threat, even though the IEA and US intelligence say it wasn't, but let's accept your premise that it was a threat. This is not the way you stop a nuclear program. We had the JCPOA, which Israel opposed, Donald Trump opposed. Iran was enriching at 3.67%, had no pathway to a bomb under the JCPOA, as every major disarmament and nuclear expert said at the time. It was Israel, Netanyahu, Trump that opposed this, and now we have them at 60% enriched uranium because of the actions of Israel and Donald Trump. So if you claim to want to stop Iran from having a nuclear weapon, you've done a very bad job of doing that. In fact, if you're the Iranian leadership now, you probably want a bomb more now than ever before because you've been attacked by Israel 2 years running. That's one point. On the point about projection, the point I'm making is this, Doran, and you dodged it, so let me ask it again. The only country in the Middle East right now that can put its finger on a button and fire a nuke is Israel. The only country threatening to fire the nuke it has, Ben Gvir smiled and nodded the other day when an Israeli journalist suggested nuking Iran, is Israel. Why is your country, Doran, you're a spokesman for the military, in violation of UN Resolution 487, which was unanimously passed, including by the Reagan administration in 1981, calling for Israel to open up its nuclear facilities to the IAEA? Why wouldn't you allow IAEA inspectors to look at your illicit secret nuclear weapons program?
First of all, I think you and I both know that there are no binding United Nations resolutions against Israel. Not in any sphere.
UN Security Council Resolution 487.
There's not a single
You're wrong, Doran.
UN resolution.
You're wrong.
And there is a number of.
You're lying. Everyone can Google it right now. UN Security Council Resolution
against Iran's
487. People can Google it.
Mehdi, you just said it yourself.
You can talk over me.
Basically, just
UN Security Council Resolution.
You're saying that Israel.
487.
Mehdi, one second. We can't.
You can talk over me. I'll wait and make my point again.
Okay,
well, let me just make one point,
ahead,
and then I'll let you speak indefinitely. UN Resolution 487. You can Google it right now. People can watch it at home. In 1981, the Reagan administration voted for it. It calls on Israel to urgently open up its facilities to IAEA controls. That is a UN Security Council resolution, which is binding under international law. Israel has been in violation of it for 45 years. Why are you in violation of it? And do you accept that Israel has nuclear weapons? If you won't accept that, why should we take anything you say seriously on anything else?
It is not a binding resolution. However, I want to hit your point because I think you just answered it for me. You said that this has been Israel, according to you, has been in violation for 40 years. So therefore, you're assuming Israel's had a nuclear weapon for 40 years. Can you tell me one time, Mehdi?
It has.
One single time.
Are you denying
Israel
that?
has threatened another country with nuclear war. Can you tell me, Mehdi, one time when an Israeli prime minister under an entire command center would have the ability with massive controls. Just one second.
I answered your question.
That is referred to another country. Hold on, Mehdi. Another country, as you and I both know, that Iran, who you have projections about, the supreme leader, right, Ali Khamenei, which I'm very curious why you defend him and his entire regime. Ali Khamenei refers to Israel as the little Satan. And we both know how he refers to the United States, meaning this spiritual leader. You've called him a spiritual leader.
But Doran, you're not. Let me jump in here. Doran, let me jump in. Let me jump in, please.
Calls America the great Satan.
Let me jump in,
and you
please.
want to give him a nuclear weapon?
Stop
Israel
talking.
and the U.S. are fighting together against
please
terror
stop
regimes.
talking. I am here. I am here, and I am moderating this panel. Much as you both like to just get off without me. Mehdi raises the point I have raised with a number of pro-Israeli guests in the last few weeks. Why is it that Israel does not admit it has nuclear weapons? And are you prepared to do so now?
Israel, as we all know, is a state that upon its very founding faced an existential threat from 7 countries that attacked it. We also know that in 1967, Israel was attacked by 3 countries, followed by 1973, followed by the Gulf War in 1981, followed by Hezbollah and Hamas. There's probably not been another country on earth
What's this
that has
got to
been
do
attacked
with
as
you
much
being
as Israel.
transparent about
I'm
having
going to answer
nuclear
you.
weapons?
According to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which Israel has not signed and therefore is not bound by, Israel, if it maintains a nuclear arsenal, it has not used it, and if it maintains it, it is because it
Why are
faces
you saying if?
existential
You know
threats.
the
Hold
answer.
on. And since the Holocaust, which today is International Holocaust Day in Israel, not in it's Israeli Holocaust Day, and we are mourning tonight 6 million Jews that have died. Israel maintains the ability never to rely on anyone else, and therefore, Israel is not bound by the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty. It didn't sign on. Who is bound? The United States is bound, and it has followed it.
Yeah, but how
And
can
guess
you
what?
demand?
Iran,
How
hold
can
on,
you
wait,
demand?
Pierce,
Yeah, but
Iran,
Doran,
I answered
Doran,
you.
you're not answering my
It's because of
question.
an existential
Doran,
threat.
Doran.
But I just want to say Iran has signed it
How
and
can you-
violated
Doran,
it from 2002.
How can you, with a straight face, defend Israel's determination for full transparency by another country over its nuclear weapon ambitions when you have so far steadfastly ducked my very simple question as to whether Israel has its own nuclear weapons? And if
I have not ducked your question.
Well, do you
I'm
have them
answering
or
you,
not?
Pierce, and I explained to you that while I
do
not have firsthand knowledge of Israel's nuclear facilities, like you, I've heard the foreign reports.
You don't
and would
know- you
assume
don't
that
know.
It is, hold on, I'm answering. Pierce,
as a
you asked for an
reservist
answer.
IDF
And I would assume
spokesman,
it's highly
you don't know of
likely-
Israel's nukes.
I would assume it is highly likely, as do you, that Israel has a nuclear program. Israel never signed the NPT, and the reason Israel never signed the NPT, I would assume, even though I wasn't in the room,
Right.
is because Israel maintains its individual right to defend itself. To compare that now to Iran and a potential nuclear program in a regime that is the world's #1 global terrorism, or they are not just terrorism, they engineered the idea of terrorism. They represent terror that has killed 241 American Marines. They have killed 85 Jews in Buenos Aires. They have killed thousands of U.S. soldiers with roadside bombs. They have carried out 22, according to MI5, mass casualty attempts in England since 2022. They just killed 40,000 of the protesters. Israel has a protest about cottage cheese. Israel's protests every day. How can you compare the
All
idea
right,
that
let
Israel would
Mehdi
have a
respond.
nuclear weapon and Iran, the potential of Hitler?
Let me wait
having a nuclear weapon?
Let Mehdi respond.
I noticed that Doran said that Iran killed 30,000 of its people a few minutes ago. Now he's saying 40,000. By the end of this discussion, it'll be 100,000. It's funny how they
probably
inflate
is,
the
because
numbers
of
of people
people
killed
like
in
you,
Iran,
Mehdi.
but never recognize the 100,000 people you killed in Gaza, that your military killed in Gaza, 100,000 people minimum killed in Palestine, which are actually verified numbers by international organizations like the Lancet Medical Journal. You deny those. But let's put that to one side and deal with some of the stuff you've been saying. Number one, just some fact checks. A UN Security Council resolution is binding under international law. The Reagan administration voted for it, and you've never followed it. You proudly say you haven't signed the NPT. People watching at home will laugh their heads off. You're basically saying, because we didn't sign an international treaty, we don't have to follow international law. So then why doesn't Iran just pull out of the NPT? Why doesn't everyone just pull out of the NPT and do what Israel did? You say Israel reserves the right to defend itself. That old chestnut. No other country in the Middle East is allowed to defend itself. Israel is the country that bombed, count them, 6 countries in the Middle East last year. I can't think of a single country on planet Earth, aside from the US and Israel, that bombed half a dozen countries in the calendar year 2025. That is your country that you're defending, a rogue nation that bombs whoever it sees fit and then claims to be a victim. You say that, for example, you mentioned in your comments, you said 1967 we were attacked. Complete flat falsehood. Israel attacked first in 1967. Everyone knows that. It's a documented fact. You can call it a preemptive war, but you can't just lie on here and say you were attacked. You were not. You said that Iran pioneered the use of terrorism in the Middle East. Actually, that was the Zionist gangs. That was the Stern Gang and the Irgun who blew up British diplomats, bombed the King David Hotel, hung British sergeants, attacked British civilians and military and Arabs. It was actually Jewish and Zionist terror gangs that pioneered terrorism in the Middle East 100 years ago. So a lot of your facts are just completely wrong, and you're dodging Piers' central point, which is that you do have nukes. You know you have nukes. You're not allowed to say you have nukes, which makes this whole conversation so absurd. absurd. But the idea that you would come on TV and go after someone else's civil nuclear program. Remember, the US says Iran did not have a weapons program, while you yourself have weapons. That's the US intelligence community's view. They said last year. That is what the US said last year. The US annual.
Then why do we need the JCPOA?
Let me read out the quote to you.
Program that you support.
Why do we let me read out the quote to you.
A JCPOA,
let me read out the quote to you. If you stop interrupting me. I didn't interrupt you, Doran. You spoke for a while. In 2025, this is what the Director of National Intelligence said. We continue to assess Iran is not building a nuclear weapon and that Khamenei has not reauthorized the nuclear weapons program he suspended in 2003. A country that doesn't have nukes is being lectured by you, a country that does have nukes. It would be funny if it wasn't so tragic and you hadn't killed so many Iranian kids as part of your supposedly disarmament program.
All right, let me ask you, Doran, let me ask you a question.
Can I respond?
Doran, let me.
Okay,
You can respond.
Can I respond?
You can respond, but let me ask you. Let me ask you another question.
Like Israel wasn't attacked in '67. That Israel is basically decided to
launched
go out.
the '67 war. That's a fact.
What Mehdi does is he tells a fantasy story.
It's a historical fact.
Israel woke up one morning 2 years ago and said, "You know what? We're a country of 9 million people. Let's go attack 6 countries throughout the Middle East."
Not 2 years ago, Doran. Not 2 years ago.
Because we just
78 years ago, you've been bombing your neighbors.
7th. By the way,
so 78 years you've been bombing your neighbors from the very beginning.
For a very, very, very long time. If
and you interrupted me, Doran.
I assume that you want to hear my answer. That's why we're here. October 8th.
You interrupted me when I was trying to read out the threat assessment, remember.
October 8th, there was also a war. That war began when Hezbollah saw Israel weaken on October 7th and launched a campaign of 6,000 rockets at Israel. And then Israel responded. Iran fired 500 ballistic missiles, which has been attacking Israel consistently. And Israel decided back then with the United States that it is time to deal with the #1 terror regime in the entire world. And what I hear from you, Mehdi, is you make an incredibly compelling case, diverting the conversation away from stopping Iran's nuclear power by hyper-focusing on the Israeli democracy that you yourself admit has had nuclear weapons for 40 years and never used them. And you were essentially getting a get-out-of-jail-free card for Iran. Mehdi, are you willing, if there's a possibility in your projection, if you projected that Iran would have a nuclear weapon, would you be concerned?
All right, well, I want to ask a question based around that, hang on. If I could just ask a question of Doran now, which is this, if the whole purpose of this war was to stop Iran developing a nuclear weapon, do you concede now that if you don't get the enriched uranium, either voluntarily handed to you by Iran or by seizure, which would require the use of ground forces, that the whole war will have been a failure? Do you accept that?
No, it wouldn't have all been a failure because obviously we will not get the most important thing, which is to remove the enriched uranium from Iran, and that is the number one.
So it would be a failure if you don't get the uranium.
If we do not get the uranium, the #1 goal of this war will not be fulfilled, and it's going to put the war in a sense of stagnation, which I think will probably continue until that happens for one of 2 reasons. Either Iran is going to develop a nuclear weapon and threaten the rest of the world, and the world will then try to stop them, probably too late, or at some point in the future, I don't know when, either the US or Israel will try to make that happen. However, this war has been incredibly successful for a very simple reason. We have destroyed Iran's nuclear production capabilities, its launching timers, its hard fuel, all of the many things that go in order to take that bomb, put it on a warhead, and shoot it have been destroyed. Their ballistic missile program has been weakened as
how do we know? Because last summer,
just one second, their leadership and the planning mechanism has been destroyed.
Doran, with respect, last summer, after the 12-day war, we were assured that the whole nuclear capability of Iran had been put back decades. It was done, flattened, it was over. 8 months later, a massive war was launched against Iran because it turned out that was all baloney. Now you're spewing, what many people will say is exactly the same rhetorical baloney again. But you're also conceding that if the enriched uranium remains in Iran, this war's a failure. And I don't see how
I
you
said
get
it isn't a failure because you'll set back a terror regime that operates with ballistic missiles, operates as
but the regime remains in place.
Hamas, you'll have taken, again...
The Supreme Leader's son is the new Ayatollah, right?
Piers.
Yeah?
Say this again, I'm sorry.
The Ayatollah, the supreme leader who was killed, his son is his replacement. The IRGC regime remains in place. There's been no protests from the people of Iran, and the Straits of Hormuz have become a massive weapon for the Iranians to use economically, as they also simultaneously attack all their Gulf state neighbors. So the idea that my point is the idea that at the end of this, Iran keeps its enriched uranium, you would have to admit, in that eventuality, the war's a failure.
No, because a war, Piers, it's very rare that you get a victory, what's called, unconditional surrender of any enemy. I don't think it's happened since World War II. What you get in wars are cumulative gains. Again, this is not fast food. It's like a McDonald's drive-through. The woman says, what do you want? You say, I want, the Iranian regime. This is a process that began a number of months ago with the 12-day war. And what Israeli intelligence and U.S. intelligence saw is as soon as that war ended, Iran went right back to building a nuclear program, developing the nuclear sites, digging for the uranium that was there. They refurbished their ballistic missile sites and were expanding it from 2,500 to 7,000. And like you said, that now that we see Ali Khamenei has been killed, what do we see happen? They have not reformed. They put in another member of the exact same family, meaning this regime is evil and has to
you have done this.
Now.
Hold on, Piers, can I actually say
Mehdi respond
to
now.
Stop them, Piers. It's the idea of good standing against
Mehdi's
evil.
response, please.
So what both of you are missing, to an extent, is it's not really about what uranium is left in the country. It's about intent. You have left, the Israelis and the American government have left the Iranian government, not just in place. There hasn't been the regime change that Netanyahu lied to Trump and said would be easy in that situation from meeting. They've not just left the Iranian regime in place, but they've left the Iranian government with the clear intent to want to have to defend itself, to use Doron and the Israelis' favorite phrase, their right to self-defense. If you were in the Iranian government today, would you not want to get nuclear weapons? Would you not think I've been attacked 2 years running by people I was in the middle of negotiations with? Every time I'm in a negotiation with them, they kill our negotiators, they kill our top foreign diplomats, they threaten to kill more of us. Every time we're doing a deal, whether it's in Geneva or Vienna or Oman, they attack us, which is what the Israelis did last year. Why would you not want to get nuclear weapons? Why would you not look at North Korea and say, no one dares touch North Korea because they have nukes? Why would you not listen to Doron speaking on Piers Morgan saying, well, we didn't sign the NPT, so we don't have any obligations not to have nukes? Why wouldn't Iran say, well, we're going to pull out of the NPT, we're going to do what North Korea did, and we're going to do it because the world saw us get illegally attacked 2 years running? Doron asked me, do I want Iran to have nuclear weapons? No, I'm anti-nuclear weapons. I'm not like you. I don't support nukes and have a secret nuclear weapons program. I supported the JCPOA, which in the very first paragraph, Iran affirmed never to build nuclear weapons, which said that Iran could only enrich to 3.67%, which got rid of a lot of their highly enriched uranium. You, the Israeli government, Netanyahu, stopped the JCPOA, wrecked the JCPOA. You helped Iran enrich to 20 and then 60. You brought us to this situation, the Israeli government and the Donald Trump administration. So don't lecture the rest of us about nukes when you have nukes and you've now incentivized Iran to get nukes. Every year in the UN General Assembly, Piers, there is a resolution.
Let
me just finish my point. Doron, you and Piers spoke for a very long time. Let me finish my point. You said you don't like interruptions. I'll finish in a moment. The UN General Assembly votes every year to have a weapons of mass destruction free zone in the Middle East. Iran votes for that resolution. Everyone in the world votes for that resolution. 2 countries don't vote for that resolution. That is the US and Israel, because Israel wants to be the only power. Well, Iran doesn't have nukes, and you do.
You are so naive, Mehdi. It's unbelievable. I'm listening to you.
You can't even tell. You can't even tell. Doron, you can't even tell the viewers today whether Israel has nukes. You can't even say one statement.
Mehdi, you're defending
Doron, why should anyone believe anything you say?
You don't have a hidden nuclear program.
No, I'm not actually.
The nuclear program is Iran. It's Ali Khamenei. That's your leader.
No, the US disagree with you, and the IAEA.
I mean,
there's no evidence.
Which one are you? Because you're defending. You sound like Mehdi Khamenei. We're a nice program. We vote against nuclear weapons.
Of course.
We just want
go for racist insults.
In 2014,
that's all you have left.
We already had 20% enriched uranium. I mean, who are you speaking
Doron,
as an American citizen?
And yet,
as a British citizen?
Hold on. You're going back to 2014, Doron?
2014.
Who are you speaking as? You're speaking as the Israeli military.
And it was reported before the JCPOA.
And exactly. And when did the JCPOA get signed, Doron? Do you know what year?
2015.
Do you know what year the JCPOA was signed?
2015.
Exactly, the year later. So why are you going back to 2014? It was resolved in 2015.
And they never had to
and then you and Trump came along and wrecked it. No, the Trump administration vouched and said Iran was complying with the JCPOA. So when you keep saying, why do you trust Iran? Iran did what it had to do. It, according to the IAEA,
let's unpack the JCPOA first.
they followed the deal. No.
Mehdi, tell us the conditions of the JCPOA.
I'm going to tell you what happened under the JCPOA.
No, tell me about what does the JCPOA say? You know, tell us all the truth.
I do know, and I'm telling you now. The JCPOA allowed Iran to enrich at 3.67%. When did they start enriching to 20%? When you and your friends in the Israeli government and Donald Trump tore up the JCPOA. Jim Mattis, a general in the American military, who was defense secretary, not under the JCPOA. No, they did not. As every IAEA inspector vouched for.
What do you think happened to that 20%?
By the way, Doron, what enriched uranium does Israel have? Because the IAEA aren't allowed into Israel. So why don't you tell us? You say that we're naive. Everyone watching knows
you're comparing
about
Israel
your own country's
with Iran,
nuclear weapons.
Which is
yes, I am. I'm comparing the
insane,
country that has attacked
which is
6
morally
countries.
Insane. Israel's not closing the Straits of Hormuz.
Why? You're
and
worse.
International shipping.
You're morally worse
Israel's
than Iran.
not funding proxies
You're morally
throughout
worse
the
than
Middle
Iran.
East.
You bombed
Israel
6
doesn't
countries.
target Marines.
You bombed 6 countries.
Israel does not target Marines
countries
or
last year.
Hezbollah or Hamas
You bombed
or
6
kill its
countries.
own people in the streets, even though you think it does. Israel
You just
is an
murdered
open
children in Lebanon last week.
Doron,
your military just killed 300 people in a single 10-minute span last week. You blew up children in strollers. You killed a 1-year-old at a funeral. You killed 300 people in Lebanon in one day last week.
Who made that battlefield,
You filled
Mehdi?
up the hospitals. You bombed aid distribution centers.
Who created that battlefield?
You did. You violated the ceasefire with Hezbollah 15,000 times. Yes, you violated the ceasefire.
Was there anyone over there?
15,000 times, according to the UN.
Hezbollah that was
Doron, I know you don't like
population.
facts, right? But you haven't brought a single fact to this discussion.
Iran wasted people on the streets and they killed them in cold blood. Israel
Why did you violate the
people
ceasefire
of southern
with Hezbollah?
Lebanon, please move out of the way so that we can actually kill Hezbollah. And
no.
Pierce had on
then
just
why did you kill 300 people in 10 minutes? Why did you carry out Lebanon's October the 7th last week?
You know what? It's not about you. It's not
why
about
did you
me.
carry out
Listen
Lebanon's October the 7th last week?
Salah Maknouk was on
Why did you kill 300 people?
And I think you should listen to what he
300
said.
people
he
you
was
killed.
On Pierce's show, and he spoke
Doron,
the
do you not feel ashamed
that the Lebanese
your military
people
massacred
want
300
Hezbollah
people in 10 minutes?
How do
you sleep at night?
I'm sure it is true. I'm sure it's true many Lebanese people would like Hezbollah gone, but it's also true that many Lebanese people right now are running terrified for their lives because of the bombing raids over them.
A million people displaced from their homes by
And a million people have been displaced from their homes. And there's a horrible familiar past that follows what happened in Gaza.
Pierce, if we don't displace them, then I go on this show and we're accused of killing civilians, right? And if we do displace them, then we're accused of displacement.
You told them they can't come back. Don't lie, Doron. Don't gaslight us. You've told them they can't come back. That means it's ethnic cleansing.
I have one question for you. Does Israel have a right to respond to Hezbollah after they shot 6,000 rockets at us unprovoked on October 8th, 2023, one day after October 7th? Do we have a right to respond?
Any country has a right to defend itself. Of course it does.
Does Israel have
a right? Does Lebanon have a right to defend itself from Israeli invasion?
How?
Hold on. Doron, you always start these timelines. You start these timelines in weird places. You say 2014, ignoring what happened in 2015. You say October 8th, 2023. You ignore what happened in 2024, Doron. Let me remind the viewers of Piers Uncensored. There was a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah since the end of 2024. According to the UN, according to UN peacekeepers that Israel keeps attacking, you keep attacking Irish and Nepalese and Indonesian peacekeepers. The UN peacekeepers in southern Lebanon say Israel violated the ceasefire, not 1,000 times, not 5,000 times. They say you violated the ceasefire 15,000 times over the last 18 months. So please don't come and tell me about unprovoked rockets.
I don't know about your
you,
numbers.
Israel, violated that ceasefire.
I have one question.
You killed,
why did
well,
Israel,
you can Google is your friend,
okay.
400 people.
There was one basic condition.
You can't just say I don't know my numbers.
We've run out of time.
Numbers are from the UN.
We've run out of time.
Southern Lebanon.
I'm sorry, we've run out of time.
You murdered 300 people last week, including a baby at her father's funeral.
I'm going to leave it.
We murdered 300 terrorists last week, and I think those are your people.
Okay.
A one-year-old baby is a terrorist? I think that speaks volumes about your view of Arabs.
I'm going to leave it there.
The one-year-old baby was put in harm's way because Hezbollah
I'm going to leave it there, gentlemen.
At a funeral?
I appreciate you joining me. We've run out of time. So thank you both very much.
All right, guys, I'm going to leave the debate there because, wow, Did you catch how that exchange ended? The final comment completely changed the tone of the conversation. Those are your people. That line alone is exactly why so many viewers walked away frustrated, because instead of staying focused on facts, policy, or accountability, the conversation suddenly drifted into something far more personal and divisive. Now look, whether you agree with Mehdi Hasan or not, one thing he did in this debate was force people to actually go and fact-check what was being said, and that matters. Because after watching the clip, I did exactly what a lot of people should do in political conversations. I looked things up. On the first claim regarding UN Security Council Resolution 487, Mehdi argued that Israel had not complied with calls for international nuclear monitoring. Doran pushed back hard on that point, but when you actually go and read the publicly available information, you start to understand why this issue keeps coming back into the conversation. Then there's the 1967 argument. Doran framed it as Israel being attacked, while critics point to Israel launching what was described as a preemptive strike during the Six-Day War. And this is where the bigger conversation begins. Because how many times have we heard the phrase imminent threat used in modern conflicts? That's the question people are debating right now. If one country says military action is justified because of self-defense or future threats, people naturally begin asking, does that same logic apply to everyone else too? And by the way, before anyone twists this conversation, criticizing a government is not criticizing an entire group of people. Those are two completely different things. Political leadership and policy decisions should always be open to criticism and debate. At the end of the day, this debate raised way more questions than answers. Was this a masterclass from Mehdi Hasan? Did Doran make valid points that people are overlooking? Or did both sides expose how messy and complicated this entire issue really is? Let me know what you think in the comments. If you enjoyed the breakdown, hype the video up, drop a like, and subscribe for more political commentary from a Brit's perspective. I'll catch you in the next one.